Hi there, I'm John McMillan and welcome to this special edition of PCB Tech Talk. Today I'm joined by one of Mentor's technical engineers, Shivani Joshi, to discuss not only the availability of the new free student edition of PADS Professional, but also how students worldwide can enter our PADS Professional Student PCB Design Contest. Before we get started, be sure to subscribe to this podcast. Let us know the topics you'd like to discuss and if you'd like to be our guest right here on PCB Tech Talk. Hi, Shivani. Welcome back to PCB Tech Talk. We got an exciting topic to talk about.
Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be back on the podcast.
Well, how about starting out with something about yourself? Any particular passion for the field? How did you decide to be an electrical engineer?
That's a great question. So I chose to major in electrical engineering at Purdue University. I graduated back in 2016. Going into college, I knew I wanted to focus on engineering. I just wasn't really sure which discipline, but something about just the problem solving and understanding the big picture while also still being able to focus on nitty-gritty topics really just spoke to me. And so that's why, the focus on engineering in general. I grew up loving math and science, and I was a huge fan of all my physics classes in high school. Especially like the electronic components. So that's why I ended up leaning towards electrical engineering in the end over any of the other disciplines.
That's great. Is there any particular area that you are especially passionate about?
So within electrical engineering, I really found a passion for power electronics. And that really came, I think, towards my third year, so my junior year of college. I had just completed an internship with Sharp Electronics, and while I was there, I was working on some high voltage TFT thin film transistors, and just understanding the whole concept from design to actually producing, those in the clean room, and just understanding the power on such a small scale that really spoke to me, and that's kind of why I focused a little bit more on power electronics, and with that, obviously signal integrity, which is been my focus here for a little bit within Mentor. All right, so my cat just woke up and I know she's going to start meowing for food, so I apologize in advance for any of that.
No problem. So many folks are working from home now. Can't tell you how many times I've heard dogs bark. Can you tell us a little about your technical engineering role at Mentor and also about your passion for students and maybe some of the resources about the new student edition?
So I have been working at Mentor for about 3.5 years now. Pretty much right after I graduated, I think within the next month. I worked with our lead development team when I had first joined, and I worked a little bit with the training department, support department, and with some of the technical marketing. And then about 2 years ago, I ended up getting a full position with the technical marketing team. Honestly, it took me some time to really know what I wanted to focus on with this job, and quite frankly, I'm still learning. I think that's one of the greatest, aspects of this job is that I get to delve into so many different aspects of the PCB realm and beyond. So there's so much to learn and to conquer. And one of the things I think I've remained passionate about is the students. I'm pretty sure my interview when I had joined the group was about needing a student edition and making a push for that. And I'm so glad that now we have all the resources together in a great student edition program. There are so many things about the PCB world that I wish I had known back when I was in college. But I had to learn that on my own. And I feel like the resources that we've been able to put together over the last couple years here have been just profound. And I think they'll be so helpful for any student or anyone really trying to get into the PCB world.
Yes, I think a free student edition can be instrumental for gaining some experience and having PCB design tool experience like PADS Professional under your belt when entering the workforce as a newbie would be invaluable, right?
Yeah, it would have been really great to get some PCB knowledge, back in college. I had to create a board for my senior design project, which I think is pretty typical for a lot of colleges. But before that class, I hadn't really touched any kind of PCB design software. So I didn't really know where to begin or, really how to proceed. And the whole class was set up for you to self-learn, which I think is also very typical. So we had to figure out, what the best tool was to use, what was going to, be able to accomplish what I needed to accomplish. So, there was a lot of research that went into that, but sometimes you don't really know what you don't know, So, there were a lot of challenges. So I personally was in charge of creating a power amplifier portion of our entire sound system for our design project. And I didn't use any type of keep outs. I didn't use copper pores. I knew that I needed to analyze my circuit before, official production, but that I didn't simulate anything on a computer because the tools that we had didn't allow it. And the ones that did, cost money. And as a student, I'm not going to pay for that. So all my analyses were done on a breadboard when I was, placing everything, by hand, which is fine. I think that's a great way to go. It just would have been easy to have, a software simulate that for me instead. And there are lots of little things like that I wish I had known back then. Some of our components were through hole. So for one of my transistors, I needed to add a heat sink, and the transistor happened to be right next to where I'd put, I believe it was like a capacitor or something, but it was in the way. It was physically impossible for me to put on this heat sink on the transistor. And had I thought about that ahead of time, or had, the chance to add a keep out area around that, I would have been able to do a better job, and I wouldn't have had to respin my PCB, which, did lose us a little bit of time. And, as a student, I have other things to worry about. And I remember that just being a huge setback at the time.
Wow, a good story. And providing the tool version, that's essentially putting the actual tool in a student's hands early. And frankly, I think having an industry tool on your resume that you've designed with can certainly help kick off a career. Can you share a bit more about the PADS Professional Student Edition?
So yeah, we do have a PADS Professional Student Edition, which is incredibly simple to use in my opinion. We have so many training resources that go with it. There's a whole lesson plan actually, which shouldn't take too long. I think that it's a great way to go and learn the basics of a tool, whether you've never used a PCB tool or, you just kind of need a refresher. I think that was such a great little step to go through. And I mean, it would have been great to have something like that in college. I was going through YouTube and seeing all these complex designs being made. And, I was trying to, pick out the little things that applied to my design project. But, something like this would have been so great because you have the YouTube videos there, you have training resources, you have, PDFs, you have all of these things that I think would have just made life so much more simple. And it's all free, which to me would have been a huge sell too.
That's great. And the student edition was packaged to ensure that the student has everything, all the resources they need to get up and running and be successful using the tool. And you have been, and you have a particular role and involvement in this. Can you tell us a bit more about that? Oh, and also share a bit about your student-focused blog series.
So yeah, I've been involved a bit with the student edition. I helped out with the workbook that went with it, was able to go out and work with some students to make sure that things flowed properly and get some feedback there. So that was a great experience. And I've been working on a blog series called the ABCs of PCBs, and it's aimed at the new user, the students. There were so many things I didn't understand about PCB design, like I said, back in college. So this is just kind of my way of trying to share those little tips, because I remember going through articles aimed at helping, professional designers, and I wasn't able to really grasp the basics or, the why behind the tips that they were sharing. It was just supposed to be kind of obvious. And for someone who hadn't done a design before, that, didn't really help me. Some of the wordage didn't even make sense. And, I would have loved to have a true so-and-so like beginners database to have learned from. So even though I'm not helping you necessarily go through a design in this blog series, I'm just hoping that the concepts I go through are simple enough to understand and, hopefully just teach students the little things to look out for when they design their first boards.
Something else we want to make folks aware of is the new PCB Design Competition. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, I am super excited. We have a PADS Professional Student Design Competition that is live. It closes August 7th, so you still have plenty of time to get in a design. And you could really submit anything. There are no requirements on this other than it needs to be created in the PADS Professional Student Edition, which again is a free download. You can submit a brand new design, something that you had been thinking about, maybe just like a side project, or even, a design that you had already created, maybe for a different class in your previous terms. Just recreate it in the student edition and submit it, and maybe you'll win some Oculus Quests. Kind of a cool prize. And honestly, there's more to it than just that. I mean, that is something that you can put on your resume. Honestly, you can say that I have been able to create a design in PADS Professional Student Edition. And that translates so well to industry when people are looking to hire. If you've already used an industry standard tool, that's a huge plus to know that they're not going to have to reteach you. That's something that is just a skill under your belt. I don't see why you wouldn't. And you never know who's going to look at these. I mean, we have some great judges for this contest. One of them's even from Tektronix. So these are people in industry. You never know who's going to end up looking at it. So why not just kind of dive in and see what you can do?
Awesome. Absolutely. If you are a student, I encourage you to not only download the free student edition, but enter the contest, as Shivani mentioned. Just submit a design created in PADS Professional Student Edition for your opportunity to win an Oculus Quest. Also, the top 10 ranked student designs will receive a PCB Design Excellence Certificate, signed by the Senior Vice President of the Electronic Board Systems Division here at Mentor, a Siemens business. I think that's a nice addition to any resume. Well, thanks, Shivani, and as always, it's great having you on, and we'll be having you back very soon for a Signal Integrity Q&A podcast.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks for having me on, John, and I hope everyone has a great day.
Thanks, Shivani, and thank you for joining us for this special PADS Professional Student Edition podcast. For more information on this podcast, as well as a link to getting your free seat of PADS Professional Student Edition and the link for entering the PADS Professional PCB Design Competition, be sure to check out the show notes. There, you'll also find additional information about the PCB Tech Talk podcast, along with our email address, so feel free to send me your comments and questions, or any topics you'd like to hear discussed or talk about, or if you'd like to be my guest right here on PCB Tech Talk. I'm John McMillan. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast app, and be sure to catch the next episode of PCB Tech Talk.